guys, I have Raphaella Fontenot. She is an angel and she is doing everything in her power to help the victims of sex trafficking. Raphaella, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I live in Sacramento County. I am a mother of three. I work at a nonprofit organization here, and we have a warming center 6 days a week. The name of our center is CASH. It stands for Community Against Sexual Harm. Basically, our center is open from 12:30 to 4:30 for anyone that would like to come and seek shelter. Also, we feed lunch, and then we also have a clothing closet.
When you say seek shelter, do you mean anyone can come and seek shelter or victims of sex abuse?
We serve anyone in the community that identifies as female,
I
that
see.
also identifies with experiencing some type of commercial sexual exploitation or human trafficking, or has had to perform survival sex ever in their life.
So, could you tell us a little bit more about sex trafficking community? Like, what does that mean?
I think that one of the downfalls of not being educated in what trafficking is will allow things to go on right in front of you and you won't know. Uh, the victimization part, anyone can be a victim. I wish our center, served anyone who identified, but we focus on women. But anyone can be a victim, and it can happen in low profiled areas, in red lined areas, or in rich areas. However you identify the different communities, it is present in all communities in some form. So yes, I believe that we need a community.
Can you tell me a story on someone who came to you and belonged in a community that you didn't think she belonged in, or how should I put it? She came from an affluent community and landed in your shelter. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
We had a young lady come in that is between the ages of 18 and 24. She also has both of her parents in the household. They are middle class. What she identified with experiencing was still longing for some type of connection, right? She wasn't getting the full attention in her eyes from her parents, from what was going on in front of her. She did share that, one of them was drinking. And so that did cause a sort of rift in their family home, which pushed her from wanting to be inside that home. And when she did that, in her vulnerability, she met some people that identified her vulnerability and began to tell her things like, if you come over here this way, that's not going to happen over here. We'll take care of you. Or, if you need something, then I can be able to provide that for you. And so for someone that was not knowledged, especially in outside world, for someone to tell them that they can not only help them, but they'll protect them because this is a dangerous world is very scary. She needed protection. If she didn't want to stay at home, that's fine, but she needs to be safe and this world isn't safe. And so that is how she got in a relationship with someone. And unfortunately, that started to turn into different things, introduction to dating websites, something that was supposed to be escort business, if you will. And, that happened for a few months. And then after that, it was expressed to her that, well, we've got to do more because we've got to move from this place to a different place. And this area isn't as good, things like that, that were used to encourage her to get into the line of work more.
And she left her home thinking that her parents were drinking, you said, or so on. And she didn't
Yeah.
want to get used. I mean, she didn't want that in her life. So she ran away. Now she fell from the fire to the frying pan, basically. Was she doing drugs or alcohol by herself?
Like I mentioned, it was upsetting for her to see, her parents going through what they were going through just with alcohol. But she did state that once she realized, because she did try to leave, she did mention that. About 6, 7 months into it, she wanted to go back home. But at this point, now her parents weren't allowing her back home. That for coping, yes, she did. She
Yeah.
started drinking herself and doing other illicit drugs that she identified with helping her, do the things that she was doing and not have to feel the way that she was feeling while she was doing it.
So how long did she do that?
She stayed with that guy for about a year and a half.
Has her life turned around now, or
She has taken the time to focus on herself and, got back into school and still doesn't have kids, which is great. But her love is the medical field. So I know that she's working on that.
can you tell us about you? Why did you get into this industry? Meaning, as a person who's helping others.
I actually got into this line of work by being a client here back in 2018. I myself
Did
was
you
also running from a
define
trafficker.
at what age did you get into it?
25.
Was this out of choice?
When I sit back and think about the space that I was in mentally, I thought that that was my choice. It had very similar introductions. I had moved out of Sacramento. I moved to Reno. This was a couple of years after I had lost one of my children. So I was extremely unhealed from that and very vulnerable. And I moved to a different city because I thought, hey, they are open 24 hours. I am a workaholic. I can identify with that. I'm working on it, but Sacramento only has places open for so long. So I figured, hey, I've worked in food, I've worked in retail, I've worked in all these different places. So shoot, if I go there, then these places are open all the time. And what that did was kind of throw me in the frying pan because I was extremely naive of that part of the world. And me living out there by myself made me an easy target. It was simple for the gentleman to approach me the way that he did. He did not approach me as a threat or someone that would ever force me to do something that I didn't want to do. He even acted like a friend. And when I got laid off from my job, because there was no seniority there, and I guess times are low at certain times in casinos, that makes sense. He opened his door to me. Now, when he opened his door to me, I've never really accepted that before unless I was in a relationship with someone. And again, I was 25. It was an unknown territory for me, but at first he was very nice. He would buy food. He would make sure that I had, the clothes. I could do my laundry. I could sleep. He never forced himself on me or anything of that nature in the beginning. So I felt safe. And then my job offered me my job back and I was going to take it. And he looked at me and he said, "You think that you want to work for, $7.95 an hour? I mean, you can do a different job that is way, way more paying than that. And it's way less time." And I was like, okay. And he slid me the computer, and the computer showed sites that I had never seen before, but that were basically gentlemen looking for support, looking for escort, looking for those kinds of things. And that's how I got into it. I do remember my first time. The gentleman was not rude. He was actually very nice. He was older.
Because of money? Did he offer you anything? Why did you get convinced?
My son had passed away 2 years earlier, so I thought that I was kind of a useless woman, in all honesty. I felt that the things he was saying was like, you go out and you don't know that people look at you all day. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful, and you're just walking around and letting everybody see you like that. You don't think that they think of you in these ways? Don't you think that you should charge people for that? And it made sense in my trauma filled brain, right? And I also felt at that moment that, well, shoot, I lost my job. You know, my child is gone. Uh, I'm not married. I have nothing to offer. And so I believed that maybe that's all that I had to offer.
Once you made up your mind that you were going to do this, or he convinced you to do this, how did the transaction happen
So I got instructions to
from him?
to go down to a bar. He told me what the person's profile, he showed me his profile picture. And he said, you're supposed to meet him here, meet him at the bar, at 7 o'clock, whatever time it was sundown. And so I followed the instruction. I went to the bar and he was sitting and he was waiting. What I realized later is that this same person was actually creating posts for me on Backpage before my knowledge. So those transactions started without my hands taking any money. It was already done. So I don't know, maybe he sent him Venmo or something. The instruction was to go and spend 2 hours with him.
What's going through your mind, Raphaella? Are you scared?
I was scared and I think I was numb. It's very important to understand unhealed trauma within people and how it can place you in positions of vulnerability. When I saw him and I saw he was a much older gentleman and was walking with, a support like a cane, I figured, okay, well, maybe I'm not in too much trouble. Maybe I can defend myself if this person tries to do something crazy. But I also started drinking during that time to numb how I was feeling.
You meet him, you introduce yourself to him, and he says to you, let's go to my house or let's go to my hotel.
He said, we can go to my house. I'll show you where I live and blah, blah, blah. And the whole time, I always had my phone. I always had to keep instructions, a tail on what I was doing, where I was going, all of those things. So I would send those instructions. This person's telling me to go to their house. What do I do? And his response was, go to his house.
When you go to his house, are you afraid he may shoot you? He may stab you?
What I can say is that my first date showed me not a very good view of what the next 4 or 5 years of my life would be. Because even though that gentleman was okay, even though that gentleman really just wanted my time.
That horrible man, you mean? They're a very kind person. You keep calling them gentlemen. They're not.
But I have to get out of the verbiage of calling them Johns. So, I know that we're all people and I do know that we are not perfect. But I also know that no matter what level, that is always a dangerous situation to be in all aspects. It's not something that should ever be considered as an option.
It was bad? Was he nasty? Was he rude? Did he manhandle you?
He did none of those things. So I thought, oh, okay, so these are just people that are alone, or these are just people that don't have a spouse, or they want somebody to be around them and be kind. That was my view. And that changed very quickly. 2 weeks after that, I went to one of the casinos, the Sands Motel, and I sat at the bar and a gentleman approached me. This was not from the site. This was not instruction or anything. And my pimp was really, really keen on not directly telling you to do things. They will just give you rules like, go check out what's going on outside, or, go to the bar, but don't drink no alcohol, just little things like that. They could never truly implicate them, but we knew what they meant, right? And that night I did not follow the rules, and I did drink. I was upset. I didn't want to be in this situation. And the gentleman that approached me bought me a drink, asked me if I want to go back to his house. And in my brain, I'm assuming it's going to be the same person. It's going to be the same vision. It's going to be the same experience. And that was very naive of me. Because when we got to his house, he proceeded to implicate that he wanted more. And the more I was holding off from giving it to him, the more he was showing me how if I didn't, it would be a problem. This gentleman did have guns in his house. I was there for a couple of hours and he, turned the shower on. Oh, you take a shower. And I'm like, well, I don't really need a shower. Like, I've already showered. And he's like, well, what did you even come here for? And I started to feel very nervous and unsafe. And And I asked him if I could just go. And he said, well, no, I paid you for my time. And you're here still because you haven't given me what I paid for. And that was very scary. The more I resisted, the more he would show his weapons, to the point where he pulled one out and finally cocked it. And then I just said, okay, go ahead. And he did what he did. And I finally left. It's sun up. And I called my pimp and he said, where are you? And I said, I don't know. And it sounded like he was sleeping. And he's like, but where are you at? And I was like, I don't know. And he was yelling at me to get on a bus, just get on a bus and come back. I believe I ended up in Sparks. I was supposed to be in Reno. And when I got back to where we were staying, he opened the door and he had a look on his face like he was extremely angry with me, and turned the water on and told me to get in the shower, you know. And from that day, it all changed. He every day would tell me, get up, get ready, get outside. Get up, ready, get out, get outside. Get up, get ready, get outside.
Did you sleep with him or?
We did. And so I think that is the Romeo effect, right? In the beginning, it was, okay, we're cuddle. Okay, we're doing all of these things. And over time, that changed. That it wasn't something that felt like safety. It looked more like preparation for the day, if that makes sense. And if not, I can explain that.
What do you mean by preparation for the day?
Forceful sexual acts, forceful anal acts, just in case somebody wants that. It was preparation, I know now. There was no love there. It was control and it was preparation. And that's it. And because I had no one else, I had no support team, I knew of no organizations like where I work now, I stayed stuck in that for a long time.
Does he have more girls than just you?
In the beginning, no. But as time proceeded, he would spend less time with me because he had already conditioned me to follow instructions. And he would leave from our place of residence in Reno and go to different places. And I wasn't allowed to ask questions. If people were coming to visit him, I had to go somewhere. Like, I couldn't be in the presence of his life. And so the more I stopped listening, I guess, the more I found out and the more I got physically and sexually abused.
Are you making money at this point? Do you have money in your hands? Or it's just that you are provided with shelter and food?
Shelter and food. You know, I would leave and come back to Sacramento. I did have one person that probably could have saved me, but where my oldest daughter was staying, where she was safe with her grandma, I don't think I honestly understood what was happening to me. I just told her I was in escorting. He would give me money to get on the bus and to come and see my daughter. He would never keep that from me. And I think he knew if he did, then I wasn't going to be as compliant as I was.
What's going on in your mind? Like, why is someone controlling me?
I honestly thought that I deserved what I was in.
And why is that, Raphaella?
I had 2 children out of wedlock. I had one in heaven. I had battled with drugs here and there throughout my life. I didn't feel like a good mom. I felt that I deserved that and that I was lucky to have someone like him that would say that they cared about me and would give me a place to stay. I had such low self-love for myself. So it was like anything was better than what I felt before. I felt really alone.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. Where did you get the strength to walk away?
My strength did not come until after I woke up from my coma. At this point, we had now transferred to Las Vegas. So if you get cited for solicitation or prostitution there, it's pretty simple for the girls, and that's very unfortunate. They get booked, they get stuck in there for 48 hours, and then they let you back out, and that's it. So I had visited there quite frequently, and I was actually in that facility when this altercation happened. We, as women, there was about 27 of us in a small room, and one of the ladies started having a seizure. And I've had seizures throughout my life, so I knew what I was seeing. And all I remember, still to this day, is just banging on the window on the door for them to help her. Like, she's having a seizure, she's having a seizure. Uh, and then I woke up in the hospital, cuffed to a bed. I'm very grateful that we had to go in the hallway, though, because it was on camera. No audio. I'm not sure what I said to this police officer, but I said something, because he ran and pushed other women out my way and picked me up by my throat. And when he did that, I put my arms around him, and he turned around, took a few steps, and then lifted me and smashed me onto the ground. Now, when that happened, it fractured my skull, and I was out for about 27 minutes. I should have been dead. It was quite alarming to watch that video that I didn't even see until about 9 months after that, because I was fighting a case that said I assaulted and battered someone when that's really not my nature ever. I was out for 3 days, and when I woke up, something had shifted. It took me a little while to be able to speak a sentence, but I had bruise from here to here, and but something shifted in my mind to where when my pimp was calling me and saying things like, "Be where you at," stuff like that, I would come back with these snarky comments like, "I'm minding my business. Where are you at?" I just became rough, and I didn't agree with what I was living in. I didn't feel that I needed to do that anymore. I didn't think that he was a good person. I just knew that I was really stuck. After that happened in 2016, I I ran and I became homeless in Las Vegas. And in that homelessness, I actually experienced even more trauma and beatings and rape by people I didn't know, because I was really, really alone then. One thing that I do know is that God is good. And I know that He was with me the whole time. I know that I had been so catered to what He wanted me to do that I had to go to sleep. I truly feel that, because when I woke up, the change had happened.
When you were homeless, did he come looking for you?
Yes,
Did you meet him? Did you see him?
I befriended someone else that was kind enough to open their door. Um, but again, you know, people who do drugs do drugs. So in that is actually how I conceived my last child. And in my homelessness, there were short periods of time that I could spend with people. I didn't want to work anymore. I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want any of that, right? So how was I going to be beneficial? So instead of doing that, I decided, okay, well, I can probably sell drugs. And I tried, but I'm just not that kind of person, I guess. And he would call, and as he would call, I would ignore or block, the number, or change my number. But then I got into a really, really bad space. I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant now, where one of his phone calls worked, where he called me every name in the book. Uh, but since he loved me and I belonged to him and I needed to come home all of a sudden, he would say things like, "You're a nasty," I don't want to say profanity, but all of those names. And he'd say, "But you're my blank and I love you." Things like that. Knowing when someone is at their lowest of the low, to accept that kind of conversation and accept that as something that is good, it tells me that person must not know what good is. And I know that that was the space that I was in. And again, I was in Las Vegas. And so I knew I wanted to come back to SAC. I didn't share this with him, but I knew if I came back to SAC because of my history with having children, that I would be a red flag in the hospitals and they would at least come and save my baby. Even if they weren't going to let me have her or give me a chance to get better, they would take care of her. But when I came back to SAC, the only person that was here to pick me up was my pimp. Uh, so even though I hadn't seen him in over a year, it picked it right back up where it was. He picked me up. He went to a wig store because at this point I locked my hair. I locked my hair when I became homeless too because I couldn't always shower. And I figured, hey, if I look like crap, nobody's going to want to touch me. Nobody's going to want to get close to me. Everybody could just think I'm crazy and just leave me alone, you know? And it seemed to infuriate him because he had very, very long locks. And he went and bought a wig and he threw me on Watt Avenue. And what was even more alarming for me was how many more people wanted to pick me up because I was pregnant.
Oh my God.
What really, really changed it for me, it didn't matter where else I was going to go, was the day that he put the gun in my mouth and cocked it. And all I could think about was now I'm 6 or 7 months pregnant. You know, and even then in my mind, even then in my trauma-filled, coercive, created narrative, my mind told me, you know what? He's not a bad guy. You know, you were doing a lot. You were talking just a lot of crap, because I was. And you know why he didn't do that? He's got to have a heart because he didn't want to kill your child. But on this healing journey, we go back and visit those moments, right? We have a memory of that. He didn't pull that trigger because his name was on the room. It didn't have anything to do with grace or the goodness of his heart, or maybe somebody in there is filled with love. Whatever happened to him in his life, I don't know. But even then, it took me 2 years of being out of the life, away from that, receiving services, for me to be able to come to terms with just that. And that's very scary,
Raphaella, why did he put a gun to your mouth?
because I was talking crap. And not only that, but when he rented the room, he knew I was lying. He knew I was doing drugs. He hates drugs. He locked the door before the gun went in the mouth. He locked the door and he went in and started the bathwater. And now I remembered that from before, that this is not good. He never ran my bathwater. I always scrubbed the tub. I always ran his bathwater. He never did that for me. And that day, he thought he would find some narcotics or something in my purse. But because he couldn't find that, he found anything that he could stick in me and kick, which is what he did. And then he peed in the toilet. And then he stuck my head in the toilet. And then he hit my face. And then said, bitch, get dressed. So as I'm getting dressed, I'm in the mirror getting dressed, but I'm talking all kinds of crap, you know. And he came for me. And that was the last day that I saw him. He left. He said, get outside, you know, the normal things. And I just laid in the bed and cried and prayed for God to show me the direction that I needed to go, for him to show me which way. And I left that day, and I walked in the rain from Stockton Boulevard all the way down to Florin with all of my bags. And then I went right on Florin all the way over to 24th. And someone saw me walking in the rain and said, hey, are you okay? And when I finally had my child and they took her from me and let me go back out, unfortunately, my stitches, I had cesareans, they busted, and I had to go back to the hospital. So now the hospital wanted to help me because they didn't want to get malpractice. And you know what? I'll take it, because it put me in a VOA bed. And in that VOA bed, with me sharing my story, those case managers and advocates there got me connected with Bridges. And then when I got to Bridges, Bridges connected me with Cash. And when I got here to Cash and realized that there's a whole community of women that have survived and experienced some of the similar things, but look extremely beautiful and untouched, I wanted that. I wanted to love myself again. I wanted to believe that I deserved to receive love. And that's how I got into this line of work, because I saw how much they helped me by just being here. not saying, who did this to you? What did they look like? How long did it last? They just said, hey, tell me a little bit about what you went through. And that was enough for them to say, you know what? We're going to enroll you. We're going to send you to this program. They paid for me to stay there for 6 months and then into transition to the point where I was able to reunify with my daughter. And I will have 6 years sober June 12th.
I know it's not easy to forget, but I think that the worst is behind you. Look at what you've done to your life now. You're helping others.
All of the things that used to make me beat myself up mentally qualify me for the position that I hold. And that's pretty cool. I don't have to look at it as something that happened for nothing. And especially not something that ever I was deserving of, for sure.
Now you are helping people at your agency. I mean, when I say people, other girls who were in the similar situation as you.
To see the light that starts shining in their eyes again when they have that epiphany or they have that breakthrough. And they're now released from that stronghold. Not to say that it doesn't follow us. Clearly, I'm crying. And so thinking about what we've been through will always be present. But to see them move in a different light, in their light, is beautiful. It's more rewarding than the pay, Sure, it pays my bills. Don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful. But if it didn't serve me and more than that, I wouldn't be able to stay here. I know how I am. And this place fills me in so many areas where I wake up and I'm happy I'm coming to work. Even if I know I have 1,800 things that I didn't finish yesterday and I know they're going to be on my desk, I'm happy and I'm ready to go.
I am so inspired just talking to you. I can only imagine the warmth and the energy and the feelings that you bring to people around you, around who you are. If you have to say one or few words to this horrible gentleman, as you call them, or this horrible man that changed your life, what would you say to him?
I would say I forgive you. I have went through my processing on this, and I can only imagine what a person that is willing to do those things to other people is going through. And I don't want to know that mentality. I don't want to know that suffrage. I don't want to know that emptiness. I would tell him that I forgive him.
I truly, truly say this when I say this to you. You're a strong, inspiring woman, and you inspire me. You're a hero. You are. Is there anything you would like to say to anyone? How they can get in touch with your organization?
You can always give our center a call if you want to know about the services or anything about our organization. If you need guidance in finding resources, that's always open as well. That number is 916-856-2900. You can always give that number a call. And it also accepts messages.